The thin strands of light from the early morning sun crept timidly through the slits in the musty curtains, slowly illuminating the cramped dorm room that I now called home. My name is Emily, and at 19 years old, I've learned that life isn't fair, especially when living in the shadow of a seemingly perfect sibling. My older brother, Jacob, is the apple of my parents' eyes. At 21, he was a math prodigy, winning competition after competition without ever needing to crack open a book. Meanwhile, I slogged through my studies, burning the midnight oil just to scrape by with average grades. The disparity in how my parents treated us was a constant reminder of my insignificance. For Jacob's 16th birthday, they presented him with a brand new car, gleaming and pristine, a symbol of his perceived brilliance. But when my 16th rolled around, a second-hand bicycle, clunky and rattling, salvaged from a clearance sale. I had to grit my teeth and express gratitude while my heart silently shattered. The silver lining in the shadowy tapestry of my life was Grandma. She remembered every birthday, and it was her promise of financial support that became my beacon through the desert of those high school years. So when I received the acceptance letter from a college in a faraway city, backed by a partial scholarship, I clung to her promise like a lifeline. I imagined the sense of liberation that awaited, only marred by the shocking reality that no funds arrived, leaving me teetering on the brink. Upon questioning my mother about it, her wrathful retort echoed in my ears. How selfish can you be, demanding money while Grandma's struggling? Get a job instead of begging. So that's what I did. I split my time between classes and a cafe job, while penning articles for websites to fill the financial void. Sleep was a distant memory as I juggled academics and these menial jobs. Yet even with two income sources, life was a perpetual battle against hunger. I remember when the cafe closed for maintenance. I nearly fainted from lack of sustenance. My roommate, Laura, was my savior during these dark times, sharing her meals and even loaning me money when my laptop broke, though I meticulously noted every borrowed penny, vowing to repay her generosity one day. Throughout this struggle, Jacob remained a mythical figure, said to be thriving at his university. But it always seemed to be hearsay from my parents. Direct conversations with him were rare, laconic, and filled with evasive responses. Until that fateful weekend at Grandma's birthday, I was blissfully ignorant of the truth behind my family's facade. As I boarded the bus to my hometown, my mind was abuzz with anticipation at seeing Grandma. The atmosphere at the celebration was one of warmth and familial joy, an illusion of unity shattered only by Jacob's conspicuous absence. When I asked about him, my parents quickly covered up with vague excuses about his studies. I tried to suppress the pang of longing as I surveyed the feast spread gloriously upon the table, far more abundance than I had witnessed in months. I busied myself with the food, trying to stay indifferent to the pitying gaze of my cousin Evan. "Amanda, what's going on? You look like you've lost weight," he blurted out amid the clatter of dinner conversation. Before I could respond, my mother's voice cut through, laced with ignorance. "Oh, she's just following one of those crazy college diets, probably trying out intermittent fasting or something like that." I opened my mouth to correct her, to reveal the truth of my struggles, but Grandma intervened sharply, her gaze scrutinizing across the dining room. "Amanda, isn't the $2,500 I send you monthly enough for food?" Time seemed to freeze as her words hung heavily in the air. All eyes flicked towards my parents, whose attempts at placating smiles slipped into fearful glances. "Grandma, I don't receive any money from you," I whispered, the revelation crashing into the reality that weakened my grasp on my champagne glass, sending the room into a thick silence. Grandma turned towards my parents, her demeanor steely and unyielding, the promise of confrontation brewing beneath the surface tension. "Robert, Elizabeth, the office. Now," she commanded, her voice carrying an authority that brooked no argument. My parents slunk away, their confidence visibly eroding. Left at the table, whispers and awkward glances surrounded me, engulfing me into a bubble of self-isolation as the small talk resumed with forced enthusiasm. I excused myself to the hallway, pressing my ear against the door of Grandma's office. barely decipherable words of betrayal filtering through. Words like deception and trust punctured through the muted tones of my father, whose money troubles were shamefully exposed. When my parents emerged, eyes stained with defeat, they departed the party wordlessly, a gust of wind snuffing out their presence. I returned to my place, feeling comforted by Evan's gentle hand on my shoulder, but a numbness seeped into my bones. Grandma joined me minutes later, forcing a smile as she rallied the remaining guests for cake, the echoes of discord masked by the clinking of plates and the hopeful facade of festivities. That evening, Grandma pulled me aside, her voice a comforting balm to my fractured spirit. "Don't go home tonight, Amanda. Stay with me," she insisted. Her eyes filled with a protective light that reassured me in ways I'd long forgotten to expect. Wrapped in Grandma's warm presence, I learned how neglect, deceit, and favoritism had controlled the narrative of my childhood. Grandma hadn't directly handled my or Jacob's tuition. She trusted my parents, who betrayed that trust to cushion Jacob's entanglement with gambling. Their choice to funnel money into his unrecoverable endeavors at the expense of my well-being felt like a sucker punch each time Grandma unveiled a new aspect of their lies. All those tales of Jacob's taxing academic life were fabrications. He never attended college, the so-called education fees diverted to a pipe dream of redemption. I felt anger course hot through my veins, my struggle starkly juxtaposing the cloak of indulgence cast upon my brother's mistakes. Grandma filled in the gaps with grave sincerity, each word layered with years of obliviousness I had lived under. She explained how my parents directed funds meant for Jacob's academic endeavors to dubious rehab attempts. All those letters from school reiterating his efforts, the tales of his exams and exertions, they were mere mirages. He was never occupied with scholarly tasks, but consumed by the cycles of gambling, hiding behind a computer screen in our childhood home. When it was their turn at confrontation, Grandma's calculated resolve sliced through my parents' defenses. Sensi's demanding accountability. Grandma's office adopted the air of a courtroom as she pressured them to own up to their misuse of her trust and funds. Their admission uncloaked years of decisions shaped in Jacob's favor. Decisions that left me stretched to breaking point. After they departed, Grandma and I lingered over the remnants of the day, finding solace in the quiet corners of her comfy living room, seizing this newfound transparency that, although filled with sorrow, also bore the seeds of liberation. For the first time, clarity supplanted the fog of ignorance I had been shrouded in. Grandma took up the mantle of anchor, supporting not only my finances with a generous monthly allowance directly to my account, but also bolstering my resolve to stand firm in my emerging independence. In the quiet glow of the kitchen, she said, "From now on, your life should revolve around your dreams and studies, not this deceit." Her words etched a promise of support, unwavering and maternal. The days spent with her were infused with conversations that stretched from academia to aspirations, reminding me of the wealth of overlooked potential I still harbored. I soaked up her stories and counsel, feeling pieces of my confidence bolstered, as if patching up a tattered quilt. The decision to return to college came with a lightness I hadn't felt in years. Grandma drove me to the bus station, insisting on gifting me an emergency fund before I left. Pressing an envelope into my palm with a knowing nod, an action devoid of the burdensome strings that had been previously stitched into my life. Back at college, one crucial decision freed me significantly, leaving the content writing job that drained both my time and spirit. With Grandma's support, my earnings now only had to tackle essential costs, allowing focus on my studies and part-time cafe work, which I genuinely enjoyed. The financial shackles that previously held me captive relaxed their grasp. I embraced changes in my life with unexpected enthusiasm, reflected in the luxury of replacing worn attire, of a mini fridge abundantly stocked, of settling my debts to Laura. In the weeks that unfurled, the relief of sustaining focus solely on my education transformed my existence from one of perennial exhaustion to boundless potential. My grades soared higher than they ever had, grounding me in a newfound perception of academic prowess. as I engaged more deeply in my classes, discovering intellectual corners previously unseen. My evolution fostered an environment where opportunity began knocking with rapid frequency. Among these opportunities was a recommendation from my psychology professor who noticed my analytical essays. "Have you thought about applying for the research assistantship?" she proposed, setting kindling to an eagerness I hadn't dared entertain before. No longer shackled by the pressure of multiple jobs, I seized this chance, beginning the path toward aspirations I'd long dismissed as frivolous dreams. Somewhere along the path to reclaiming my autonomy, my concept of family evolved. I began recognizing that facilities surrounding one's growth extend beyond blood relations, encompassing individuals, like Laura and Grandma, who recognized intrinsic worth and celebrated it. Direct family ties were once sources of unequivocal security, but in their absence, I found strength in new, healthier connections. Freedom from the weight of unmet familial expectations and untold deceptions allowed me to breathe deeply, savor academic success, and social circles like never before. The newfound space afforded clarity, cementing plans for a future dictated by choice, not coercion nor inherited obligation. The past loose threads of my life were being neatly tied, woven into the story of newfound independence, unfettered by the mistakes and missteps that had not been mine to bear. The rhythm of my life settled into a peaceful cadence, one guided by the gentle sway of security and expectation, as I savored the independence I had long chased after. Flashes of the person I was began melding into the person I aspired to be, intertwined with experiences and resilience now deeply seated in the soil of my self-awareness. When Grandma unexpectedly dropped by for a campus visit, her presence filled my life with a joyous infusion of love and warmth, usually reserved for more than brief moments. Her mischievous grin and challenge of surprise inspection as she arrived at my dormitory radiated a playful spirit I welcomed eagerly. Over lunch, Grandma casually mentioned changes that rippled deeply across the financial fabric of our family. "I've altered my will," she divulged over sandwiches, the revelation underscored by the mundane surrounding environment. "You're my sole heir now." I nearly choked, disbelief competing with gratitude surging in overwhelming waves. The knowledge was not transactional, but a symbol of trust and choice, a quiet path lighting the darkness that my parents' favoritism had left in its wake. "It's about what you'll do with it, Emily. Your decisions thus far have demonstrated a strength that reassures me," she explained, acknowledging my perseverance through hardship. Trusting me on this level was monumental, unshackling me from remnants of self-doubt while carrying the weight of responsibility. Despite the news, an anxious undercurrent whispered of looming familial disputes. Grandma gently forewarned, suggesting that my parents might try to manipulate circumstances to realign financial tides back in Jacob's favor. She was right. Not long after, an unannounced visit from them provided a testament to her foresight. When they appeared at my dorm, their strained countenances bore ill-timed requests matched by evasive conversational dances as they sought to discuss the newfound inheritance scenario. "We hope you can talk Grandma into revising her decision," Dad entreated, his voice tapering into a blend of desperation and entitlement lacking sincere humility. Their perception of me as a tool, a means to an end, crystallized into clarifying understanding. In their eyes, family equated to leverage, not love. I reached an impasse, an unavoidable crossroads with towering barricades built of betrayal. Why would I do that? My reluctance didn't reside in vindictiveness, but necessity, self-preservation bound to my heart's independence. Mom wept bitterly, her words drenched in a misguided appeal for empathy. "What we did for Jacob. Your brother needs us." Her justification paper-thin, riddled with moral detours and self-serving misdirection. History repeated to the rhythm of denial. Heritage formed around excuses. As they reached into recycled justification, the reconciliation they sought wasn't in the realm of honest apology, but mask-worn intentions of monetary rescue, voicing the suffering I'd internalized for years, brief fragments epitomizing the acute hardships faced, did little to change their perception of events. They aimed to enlist my complicity, to rewrite the narrative from one of harsh reality to shadowed illusion, poised to deflect personal accountability. "We're family," they reiterated, their pleas but hollow echoes against a backdrop of relentless manipulation. "I'm not responsible for fixing your mistakes," I replied, the weight of my deliverance firm in tone, securing boundaries too long unasserted. The admission fractured the room's silence, representing a line drawn across familial dynamics, one I resolved never to erase. Their motives exposed, reluctant acceptance suffused the aftermath as subtle restraint replaced vocalized appeal. The tenuous tie to years of misplaced faith and conditional love severed quietly but irrevocably. In their parting wake lay the muted entanglements of unyielding past expectations. As I reevaluated interactions, reflections arose of how deeply entrenched familial loyalty obscured the truth, with love contorted into something both nurturing and destructive. The ties of unwarranted guilt disentangled, leaving clarity to pervade a life unclouded by undue obligation. The discourse on my terms left a bittersweet taste, but heralded a necessary segue, bidding farewell to well-worn narratives, embracing the scope of my redefined family and identity. As the days transitioned into months, my absence from their emotional spheres no longer bore the sting of exclusion, but blossomed into the freedom of blooming independence. Persistent offers from Grandma led to new adventures, spring break in Miami, visceral experiences I savored unapologetically, embracing indulgence wholeheartedly, new clothes, exploring cuisine unrestricted by cost, exhilarating escapades like parasailing. These opportunities reframed security, not just as financial stability, but fulfillment, distilling borrowed dreams into palpable reality. Upon returning from Miami, a note awaited me among mail piles, my mother's script cloaked in careful curiosity. The unspoken confessions within retold their familiarity in layers. No outright apology existed, no transformative plea for forgiveness, but threads of recognition wove through, affirming self-sustaining autonomy that I worked hard to etch into my narrative. I tucked it aside, untouched, a relic for reflection with no incitement to action. The offerings of acknowledgement by omission were inadequate, incapable of mending shattered trust alone, where growth demanded more than acknowledgement. Persistent contact or not, my commitment to personal evolution meant learning when to forego past roles and become entranced with undiscovered possibilities, unperturbed by former shadows. Cultural fabric weaved anew, life crafted into my distinct expression, unpacked my generation of trusting relationships and fact-based storytelling, no longer tethered to guilt or assumption. Relaxing into these sovereign choices brought the realization bubbling over. Life, spelled out with clear detail and supportive gestures, was exactly the horizon offering perspectives of uncharted adventure, served alongside companion ties forged from resilience. With each passing day, my resolve strengthened, magnifying the quiet power rooted in this newfound autonomy. The semester that followed brought challenges, but also a sense of rejuvenated purpose as I diligently focused on propelling my studies forward. A transformative experience led me to work as a research assistant, immersing myself in academia's stimulating expanse, a realm once shadowed by insurmountable obligations. Each step further distanced me from the narrative my parents had assigned. I emerged not just as Emily the student, but as Emily the independent thinker, whose choices dictated by personal vision rather than the echoes of familial expectations. As my academic prowess grew, so did the range of opportunities. An invitation to present at a regional conference validated my path, each acknowledgement stoking the embers of ambition. Through these intellectual forays, Grandma stood ever present. Her support is a luminous beacon guiding and grounding simultaneously. Every call from her, each Sunday conversation bore the essence of a mentor's kindness, combined with the intrinsic understanding only she could offer. Revelations of her life experiences painted stories of forgotten dreams, resurrected amid laughter, instilling confidence that choice and agency were my birthright, not earned ideals through familial sacrifice. Life outside academia unfurled like petals stretching towards the sun. This existence, once restricted by financial limits, now shone with potential. Small indulgences became symbols of long-denied freedom. Simple pleasures, like leisurely coffees with Laura, or celebrated milestones shared with friends, constructed an enclave of encouragement against adversity's whispers. Amid the bustle of campus life, a single call from Jacob came as an echo from another world. He called from the rehab center, his voice carrying the weight of atonement and desire for wholeness. The conversation's intent was simple, an earnest apology delivered tentatively, each word polished by vulnerability. "I know what was taken from you," he confessed, acknowledging the siphoning of funds intended for my education. In that moment of reckoning, empathy floated between our words, not absolution, but understanding of his tangled struggles. Although my wounds were still raw, I recognized a fragment of my brother reaching across the divide, a hand grasping for redemption's elusive thread. This was no demand for forgiveness, but a shared acknowledgement of fractured familial ties. Jacob's sincerity exposed layers of introspection, inspiring reflections on resilience against a canvas textured by past familial choices. The realization stirred that while I couldn't undo history, the power of response laid squarely within my realm. His path toward healing, littered with challenges, mirrored my own journey of reconciling freedom with fraught lineage. Cautious optimism replaced the blanket of bitterness, envisioning tentative restoration in our sibling dynamic. The academic year closed with successes, achievements layered as bricks fortifying my burgeoning identity. An esteemed professor lauded my research paper, an accolade that reflected both personal and scholarly triumph. As accolades piled, they weaved seamlessly into the evolving narrative of empowerment. Grandma visited once more, her presence a comforting echo through the halls where I thrived under the mantle of self-determination. We reveled in recounting tales of progress and shared aspirations blossoming on the horizon. "This is how it should be at your age," she declared, affirming my trajectory, a narrative woven from threads of perseverance, carved through grit rather than inherited grace. Our conversations continued to anchor and expand the limits of my ambition, offering blueprints for a future predicated on my choices, not the scripted expectations set by others. As final exams approached, infused with pressure, there lay a calm confidence derived from the sanctuary of support Grandma's guidance continually provided. The future was a tapestry of possibilities, each thread unrestrained by yesteryear's regret. Life had transformed beyond Jean's parents' ideal molds and self-imposed limitations, emerging into the realm of distinctly personal emergence, awaiting discovery free from imposed boundaries or looming expectations. With the narrative arc reshaped into one exclusively my own, I welcomed each day's sunrise as an invitation to explore and savor the road ahead, a path crafted amidst the vivid hues of potential rather than paled remembrances of what once was. Relegated were the echoes of a life curated by conditional love. This journey embraced the allure of evolving promises, hues of youth coalescing into a portrait painted by me for me.